All I'm simply saying is that we live in an era where we are so drawn to this concept of it all being about us. And we spoke last week about how when you combine our own narcissism with the interpretation of Scripture, and you get this kind of narcigesis, whereby we're always reading ourselves into every scriptural story. And I think the idea is, and the understanding that we need to have is simply this, that yes, we are greatly valued by God. Yes, He's given us these astonishing promises. But why has God given us these promises that are so precious and are so great? Because He wants to glorify Himself. And I think that when we understand this is sometimes the thing that just takes us from a kind of kindergarten Christianity to a more mature faith. This understanding, this recognition that even the blessings that God has given to us, He has done so to glorify Himself, to show His wonder, His excellence, His majesty. He hasn't just said, oh, look at Anthony, isn't he a little sweetheart? Let's give him a bunch of promises because he's so nice. And honestly, sometimes the way people speak of the gospel, you would think that was the case. That God's saying, oh, you're so sweet. Let me give you a whole bunch of gospel promises. No. When God gives us His promises, when God says, I will do this for you, when God promises us things like redemption, the ultimate removal of sin and glorified bodies, when God promises that He will never leave us and forsake us, when God promises that every sin we've ever committed will be a distant memory and separated as far as the east is from the west, and all of these glorious truths of Scripture, He does it so that we wouldn't go, wow, we must be really neat people that God would do that for us. But rather that we would say, what an awesome God. You are not the king and queen on the chessboard. You are but a pawn. God is the majestic one. God is the one who must be glorified. And I have seen in my lifetime doctrine after doctrine rejected and cast aside. I've seen through my lifetime people compromising again and again and again. And it seems to me that almost universally the rejection of Christian doctrines over the course of my lifetime that I have witnessed has always been down to two factors. The acceptance from man and the comfort of ourselves. In other words, that we want to water down Scripture so that we would be accepted by our fellow man and so that our lives would be that little bit more comfortable. Well, surely God doesn't mean for us to do this. That would be incredibly difficult for us. That would be astonishingly unpleasant. Oh my goodness, if God says I can't do this, then I'm going to be very lonely, or I'm going to be very sad, or I'm going to be very upset. And though we might not recognize it immediately, doing that, thinking that way, is an exposing of our own narcissism. This idea that God just wouldn't do anything that would be hurtful to us. I do wonder how people come to such conclusions. And of course the answer is obvious. It can only happen in a vacuum of biblical illiteracy from people who simply don't read their Bibles. Have never read through Lamentations and Lament Psalms, where again and again the authors are saying, you have done this to me, you have done that to me, you have done this. That people recognize the sovereignty of God and recognize that God's sovereignty allowed Him to express His glory through hardships placed upon us. Does that mean that we just have to suck it up? No, there's a basis for us to cry out and say, God, come and rescue me. God, come and help me. God, change your course, change the circumstances. Of course we cry out to Him because He's sovereign and He loves us. But let us not be so ignorant as to think that somehow God's business is making our lives happy and comfortable. God is in the business of glorifying Himself. Does that mean that He's not bothered about us? No. It means that when he glorifies himself, that is the best thing for us. That's the best thing for us, that God will be glorified in our lives. Trust me, when we get to spend eternity with him, there will not be a moment that we say, man, I wish God hadn't put me through that. I wish my life had been that little bit more comfortable. The only thing we will wish is that we would have glorified him more. Our lives, to summarize, are for the glory of God. That is why we are here. We are here to glorify him. If we go through our Christian lives thinking that God is here for us, we are going to be constantly frustrated at every single turn. Because every time trials come, every time our plans get thwarted, every time things don't go the way that we want, every time tragedy enters our lives, we will think that he has somehow betrayed us, that he has somehow broken his word, when in fact he hasn't. We just never understood it.